I'm a huge fan of Novak Djokovic, and in this video, we'll analyze the Australian Open final we just witnessed. I was one of those people who got up 3 o'clock in the morning to watch the match, discuss his legacy, the future of tennis, and since I'm a physician, we'll talk a bit about COVID vaccines and Novak's stance on COVID vaccines at the end as well. The match was fantastic, very much like the previous match versus Yannick Sinner. If there is one thing that Novak proved, is that all those people who said that Yannick and Carlitos play at a different level, a level never seen before in tennis, all those people were wrong. Novak proved that even at age 38 and soon to turn 39, he can give them both a run for their money when he is in good form, when he has energy in his legs. And this turned out to be the biggest determinant. Prior to the semi-final, Novak was handed over a walkover by Mensik. He also had to play only 2 sets against Musetti in the quarterfinals, and so he had more energy in the tank. And this is where he had been coming short for the last few years. Last year he made 4 out of 4 semifinals, but had no more gas in the tank for the semis. And he proved the point. When he had energy, he took on Sinner and he beat Sinner. And Sinner was not injured, he was not cramping. It was prime Sinner playing on a court where he hadn't lost for over 2 years, coming off a 5-0 record against Novak, and coming off a winning spree since the US Open last year. And Novak showed him how it's done. In fact, even today, he blitzed past Alcaraz in the first set, 6-2, while he still had the legs. But after that, you could see how he started getting tired, he started getting out of puff. He was having to do much more energy management. Initially, he would give away games once he was 2 points behind. He even gave away the third set, conserving energy to utilize that energy in the most important times, which he did need in that fourth set at the end. However, just a few poor shots, some bad luck, and the gamble of conserving energy for just those 1 or 2 last matches didn't really work out. In fact, he had break points late in the fourth set. He did appear to be more energized, and I did feel that if he had been able to break and push it to a fifth set, he had at least a 50-50 chance of winning, since he was playing a lot better at the tail end of that fourth set. I think Novak, by demonstrating this, not only does himself a favor, he does a favor to the big three. He does a big favor to Rafa as well as Roger, demonstrating that these guys were playing at an extremely good level, and in their prime, they could give the young guns, Yannick and Carlitos, run for their money. I feel Novak has been an amazing ambassador for the sport. He does a lot of philanthropy. He's always been very kind towards his compatriots and other tennis players. In his interviews, he's never bitter. He never complains. He's always praising his opponents, dignified, and so really a good example. I do wonder if he will contemplate retiring now, because at 38, it does appear that unless he gets a stroke of luck like he did this time, he finds it difficult to compete against these really young players. Since tennis now at this level is such a brutal sport, playing at such a high intensity for 4 to 5 hours at times, the sport, I feel, is in good hands. Carlitos and Yannick particularly are such good role models. And the new players coming up, I feel Felix Auger-Aliassime from Quebec really has a good chance. This time around, he got injured, unfortunately, and wasn't able to make a big run, but he did play the finals of the Nitto ATP finals against Yannick, and in fact, he's been one of those players who has given good competition to Yannick and Carlitos over the last few years. He does need to improve his backhand somewhat. It is a rather weak and loopy backhand, and I hope Tony Nadal will be able to coach him in how to make it a bit flatter, more penetrating, and more powerful. If he didn't have to give so much court to run to the tram lines to hit forehands, I think Felix would be able to compete against Carlitos and Yannick. The other promising player appears to be Musetti, as we saw in the quarterfinals. But being a one-hander, unfortunately, has become a bit of a liability these days on these very fast courts. And one wonders if he'll be able to deliver on various different court surfaces like Roger Federer once did. against the current competition and in the current environment. Since I'm a physician, how could I not talk about vaccines? Some of you might remember that I was and remain a very strong COVID vaccine advocate. I personally and my entire family get the COVID vaccine along with the flu vaccine every year. Still, we've had numerous doses. I find through my own personal experience and also what I see with my clients that those who get the COVID and flu vaccines generally just get less sick over the winter and recover faster from any sickness they might have. These days, we don't really do much COVID testing. And so, if you have symptoms of a flu, particularly if you have respiratory symptoms with body pains and fever, then it could well be COVID. And those people who've had a flu vaccine and COVID vaccine typically recover much faster. When Novak initially came out with his stand against the COVID vaccines, I feel there was some influence of misinformation there. He seemed to overestimate the potential downsides. We know that there is risk, for example, myocarditis with the mRNA vaccines. However, this is very small. The estimates range from 1 in 100,000 cases to 1 in 10,000 cases. But equally, in hindsight, considering that COVID appears to be a condition which is now, particularly that we have significant herd immunity, appears to be now only really affecting badly those people who have compromised immune systems, so those people who are in the extremes of ages. And the vaccine itself doesn't appear to really prevent infection or even prevent transmission, although it can definitely reduce the severity of infection if it was given in the last 6 to 8 months. In many ways, Djokovic's stand of not getting himself vaccinated was not incorrect. He has always maintained, as he said on the Piers Morgan show as well, that he isn't against vaccines, but he is in favor of being able to decide for himself. He is in favor of choice and autonomy, and I do agree with him on that. Had he been in a different profession, if he had been a PSW or nurse or doctor, then my opinion would likely be different because he would then bear responsibility not only of himself but also potentially frail, elderly, immune compromised clients that he would be looking after. However, being a peak elite athlete and someone whose profession involves being out in the fresh air all day and being generally quite significantly spaced away from other people, his stance seems quite reasonable in those terms. Anyways, I'd like to finish the video just by saying to Novak that he has been an amazing ambassador for the sport. He's been a motivation for so many people. The reason I became a fan of his style of play is because he is like that perfect student, not flashy, not having some beautiful strokes, but just being clinical and being perfect or textbook at whatever he did. If you wanted to coach a young person how to play tennis, you would teach him how to move like Djokovic, hit a forehand like Djokovic, hit a backhand like Djokovic. And that's what he was, a dedicated student of the sport. And that's what I liked about him. I wasn't someone to be impressed by flashiness, that's not my personality. But seeing dedication to learning, perfecting, and executing was something I really admired. And I feel all tennis fans agree that his legacy of being the greatest of all time is secure. It may be challenged in 15, 20 years' time by one of the younger players, but at this point of time, his legacy is secure. Anyways, do you enjoy tennis as well? Did you watch the finals? Make sure you put a comment in the comment section.